And another thing that has been written by Alicia Smith is that yesterday's solutions don't solve today's problems. The world our children will inherit will differ dramatically from the world in which we grew up. 80% of the jobs that our current year one pupils will do not exist yet. And so when every teacher is conscious of that, that means we have a need to actually say, what is wrong with our education? How do we address it? Now, under the landscape as well, you will see that, I just want to take us through some facts. Over 10 million children are out of school in Nigeria as we speak. And that's the finds from the Federal Ministry of Education 2019. 69% of them are from the North. But at the same time, that's what we keep on looking at. But they're making a lot of effort in the North now to see how education can get better in the North. So in the South, are we going to be folding our hands? Now, within that as well, we've got 60% of them, of this out of school children, to be girls. So there's a need for girl child education to be looked into. Now, 61% of Nigerians' population are illiterate. So when we look at all this, you will see that there is a need for all of us to come back to the drawing board and say, how can we do it? How can we get it better? 33% of students proceed to senior schools. What about the 67%? A lot of them are dropping out. So there's a lot of dropout issue. The state where I work as a special advisor, when we took over, when we did the analysis, about 45% of our students were dropping out from SS1 to SS3. And what are we doing about that? Because that's where the TVET will come in, the technical vocational education. Then another thing is 41% of Nigerians' population is made up of children under the age of 15. So colleagues online today, we all have a lot of work to do. However, a lot of people online will tell me, Ronke, there are schools, particularly if you have come from the public sector, people will tell me there are no resources, lack of effective resources, lack of technology. A lot of people will tell me there's overcrowding issue in all our schools, and I agree with you. We've got schools with 180 children in classes. We've got schools with 200 plus in classes. Disadvantaged background, we've got that as well as a problem. But my problem is, are we going to keep on leaning on what is not working well? What's the way out? How do we actually overcome all this? Because we've all got to work on it. We cannot keep on sitting in what is not going on well. England, UK had the same problem. I am privileged to have worked in UK and to be covering and to be working in Nigeria as we speak. But at the same time, as of 99, there were so many steps taken. People did not lean on just their challenges. They came out of the challenges because they were able to strategize. And so if we don't have resources, what do? We've got to improvise. And we cannot keep on looking at what international world is giving us alone. What resources do we have locally? Because we've got some excellent practitioners amongst our teachers. Every time we keep on blaming ourselves, teachers are not good. This one is not good. That one is not good. When are we going to unveil the ceiling culture, the blaming culture? Because we keep on blaming ourselves of what has not worked well. And most of the practitioners in England, in UK as we speak, who are also helping them in education here, they are Nigerian practitioners. And these are people that Nigeria has produced. So you and I need to look at it. What can we do? The overcrowding issue, it will not go overnight. But at the same time, there are strategies to use for things like that. What are the strategies we can use in teaching them? What do we do with the morning session? During our time, our buildings were not perfect when we went to public schools. But at the same time, people still taught us under those conditions. We had outdoor learning. There are so many things we can look at. There are so many things that as a teacher, we need to start looking at. How can I be creative even with my problem? And the last one is what we have to be careful about. Because the parental background, when we look at 70% of the children who are underperforming in Nigeria, they have come from poor background, they have come from illiterate homes. And so what are we doing with adult education? Even the basic maths and literacy for our parents would help, because if you're not careful, if we keep on neglecting them and we say they've come from a rural background and we keep on reproducing them every time, they are also the people who are underperforming in schools. Most students that are underperforming in schools are students from those rural backgrounds. And a lot of us have come from those backgrounds. But today, by the grace of God, we are what we are. That's because we took effort. So today, I'm going to be challenging a lot of us. We're going into forecasting the future. Now, the maths and literacy that everybody has been teaching in schools, unfortunately, may not be able to help us again. So I want to really say a big thank you to Mr. Asuko for his company bringing me here today, because with that, what am I talking about? I'm talking about how we need to actually introduce soft skills of the future to all the teaching and learning that we're having in classes. How can all these nice things permeate into the lesson? Because we've got to start looking into how all this, sorry, Mr. Asuko, I can see what you're doing on my system. So we need to look at how all these things will permeate into our studies. So I'll take the most important ones. Now, when you take the most important ones, you will see that where you have communication, communication is key. With communication, how can we promote that? Because the 4 C's in our schools of 21st century, we cannot afford to leave that out. A lot of children don't know how to communicate. And so teachers, the wonderful future leaders on the platform, wonderful future builders, I want to implore each and every one of us, because teachers are builders. School owners are builders. You are the ones supporting state government. Government officers, that are in the classrooms, you are builders of these wonderful future leaders. So number one thing that I want to really advise us by the grace of God, from my own experiences, we need to promote more of speaking and listening culture in schools. We need to promote more of speaking and listening. Allow the children to talk to each other. When you get into a classroom, the fact that everybody is quiet does not mean there is good learning going on. If children are able to speak, particularly when they go out at the playground, you will see that there's a lot of good learning, good discussion, very profound discussion going on at a playground. But when teachers are too harsh, a lot of children cannot talk, and so it is affecting them. So I want to implore us that even if I ask question here on the platform in this particular room today, and I say, can you speak with your partner? When you speak with your partner, don't forget that, because we will have those people that have, normally when we ask questions in the classrooms, the key people that would always put their hands up are always the same group of people. The gifted and talented will want to put up their hands. Those children that, you have some children who are extrovert, they would just want to put up their hands, whether they get it right or not. But you would always have those passive learners. They would not want to put up their hands. They don't want to listen to you. And they are shy because they don't have that self-esteem. However, if you make them to speak with their partner, they've gained the confidence. If you now say, I'm going to be asking you to speak with us when you finish speaking with your partner, that will make them also to take part in the lesson. And we need more of speaking and listening, because the more we do that, the more our children understand what is expected when they're asked to write. Then another thing is, with 21st century teachers, under communication, we must be more of facilitators than teachers. You will see that when I started with this presentation, I've changed it from teaching and learning into learning and teaching, because we are very, very particular about learning. You can be teaching so well, but there may not be good learning. There may not be new learning. And so we are imploring each and every one of us to be great facilitators, where you can stand back, allow our children to take more ownership of their learning. Another thing is, under communication, agree on targets together. If we show children what they have done, am I communicating, please? Can you all hear me?
Yes, you are. Yes, you can hear you.
Thank you.
Yes, you are. I can hear you.
Audio.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, please,
Yes,
if we
can
mute ourselves for now, then we'll open it later. Thank you. So what I'm saying here is, when we want to give student targets, If, for example, our brother from Polycarp has actually written an essay, if he shows it in class and he has been able to score the highest mark, if we show it to all the other children, the other children will see what they have done wrong, what is it that they need to actually work on, how can they get better. With all that, it tells us that children can easily, with their teachers, collaboratively with their teachers, agree on what targets they want to work towards. Your targets can be within a term, targets can be annual, but in most cases, we always advise target to either be 6 weeks or to be termly. So it's very important because when you communicate it with the children, they take more ownership because they've been able to agree on the target by themselves. And another thing is that we need to seriously bring into Nigerian schools. I've seen quite a lot of schools in both Lagos State and in Ogun State. But at the same time, something that is not so common in some of our underperforming teachers is the fact that people don't use open-ended questions. There's always a lot of close questioning. What is your name? My name is Ronke Soyombo. It gives you one answer question and it doesn't take you to the next level at all. But if you ask me, would you like to talk to me about yourself? That will make me think. That will add value to whatever I'm doing. That means there's a new learning. So we need to encourage ourselves to actually use more of open-ended questions. If we need examples of that, we can check the Bloom's taxonomy online. Bloom's taxonomy does a lot on that, and teachers can see all that. That's something that we can do. Then let's not, with communication, let's not stigmatize any child. Every child, the child that annoys you so much today can be your best friend tomorrow. If we take that back and say, oh, because that child is so bad in class, you have stigmatized that child, you have destroyed that child, and you might actually affect the self-esteem of the child. If I ask all of you on the platform, how many people have actually transformed you, it would not be those teachers, those teachers that didn't see anything good in you. So the last but not the least under communication is let's contextualize our lessons more. We are teaching in the Nigerian community, but at the same time, you will see schools using British examples. Children don't have a clue what Victorian times is. Children don't have a clue what Florence Nightingale did. They don't know who Florence Nightingale is. History is very good, but at the same time, we can still contextualize it and bring it to our students' level. Now, another thing is under the things that we're supposed to give for this new culture, reliability, punctuality, and perseverance. In the past, you and I, we all learned under very, very good values. But now we're losing our values, even punctuality in some of the schools. Private schools might be better than public schools, but at the same time, we are the gods of our children. They are watching us. Is whatever we do, they see us as their role models. So number one thing for teachers, how welcoming and safe is your school environment? Because our classes must be welcoming, our schools must be safe environment. When children feel safe, they would actually feel better when they are learning. So let's find a way to make sure our environment is always safe and very welcoming. When you look around your class, does it just look neat or does it look like a learning room? Because with that, we will be getting to it in a minute. Then another thing is, how do we talk as adults? We're talking of, because we've lost it completely. You must please agree with me, because there's a lot of problem out there at the moment. And when we look at all the problems that we're creating, it's because there is no relationship between the teacher and the children anymore. So we need to be exemplary leader. What is it that the children will see you do? What is it that, how do you talk? How do you talk to them? Because respect begets respect. We must, because the way people bullied people in the past, unfortunately may not work. You have the children of why time. The children will tell you why, because this is their time. This is not our own time where we were listening to just what parents will say. When parents tell you to sit, the children of today will want to know why you want them to sit. And sometimes we need to take it to their level as well and allow them to understand it. Celebrating success. We need to celebrate success more in our schools. We need to have a clear policy on attendance. How are the parents supporting us? Now, another thing is, under reliability and perseverance, how challenging is your lesson? Because sometimes you might be teaching the children with one cap fitting all. You have 40 children in the classroom and all of them are being taught on the same level. In your classroom, you've got so many families, but you will see the families as we go on now. Because in your classroom, you've got the gifted and talented child. You've got that child who is working below the cognitive ability level. You've got that child who is a passive learner that needs a bit of resource to actually make them understand more. So we know that we cannot, and it will not work if we keep on teaching all our children with one cap fitting all. The last but not the least on this side is how captivating is your lesson? Because lessons, I mean, if, for example, you are married to your husband and all you do is every day, oh, well done, dear, welcome. Eba is on the table on Monday, on Tuesday it is the same thing, on Wednesday it's the same thing. You're likely not to have a good husband. I mean, you're likely not to have the good side of your husband, because we must have something that will be captivating, that every child will be looking forward towards, that, oh, I'm going to be seeing what my teacher is going to be teaching me today. So we need to bring in variety. We need to also bring in something that can seriously capture the children in classes. With that, children will be punctual, attendance will be better. But when we see a child that is always crying, if a child is crying after 3 weeks, that mom, I don't want to go to school, that child is still feeling frightened. Teacher has got to check him or herself. Now, another thing is, under the forces, we've got collaboration, don't forget. And knowing how to work in a team is a key thing for 21st century now. Encourage collaborative learning, ability groupings. I've purposely shown this particular class because unconsciously we have children working on different abilities. With mathematics and English, because I'm trying to do it for both public and private. So please, you forgive me, because I'm sure a lot of people will be challenging me that, Ronke, how can this happen in our public schools? But I'll take you to schools where they're already doing this. Now, with that as well, ability groupings, you might have the gifted and talented children. If we refuse to group them together to do the likes of maths and English, we might be destroying them, because after a while, they are the children that will be playing tantrums. You are teaching only on the middle ability level, and your gifted and talented children, they know everything. They are tired and sick of you teaching the same thing every day. If you're not careful, they change it to behavioral issue. And so behavior becomes an issue. But when we're able to tackle things, it can be the same topic, but to teach them on different levels is very, very important for us. Then another thing is, let's have the mixed ability grouping so that children who are less able don't feel neglected and don't feel stigmatized. Because there will be times, if, for example, we're teaching history, the likes of history or economics, depending if it's a secondary school or a primary school, mixed ability grouping, you have a top group child, you have the middle, you have the bottom, you can group them together and they can still work on projects. And with that, when you're asking questions, I would rather want to focus more on my less able and ask questions so that that group will score a mark. Because everybody knows you are likely to ask that the less able, that means all of them will put a lot of effort into it and make sure that they are all catered for. So it takes away the burden, because when you see teachers that are not turning gray, it's because they know the strategies to use. Then do we feed back when our children actually write things, when they do recordings in their books? When do we feed back? When they work on projects, do we feed back? When we give homework, a lot of children started taking books home. But when they take books home, some schools will never revisit it. And so that child that is working conscientiously will change his mind and say, nobody ever checks it. So I don't care. I don't want to do it again. And so I want to implore each and every one of us that we need to actually bring in all this feedback into it. Another thing is celebrating success at all times. If a child has performed well, please let's celebrate them. And don't just celebrate the children that are very good every time. What about that child that is that has behavioral issue? Be on the lookout for when on the day that child is very good. Please celebrate that child. I'm so proud of you today. Well done, son. Let that child be able to know that you care for them. Unveil the ceiling of blame culture. Enough of us as Nigerians blaming ourselves, forgetting that there are so many great things happening with us in Nigeria. Ladies and gentlemen, another thing is we must work as a team. I think I've done that. Then another thing is, how do we evaluate? Evaluation is an assessment. It gives me a lot of problems when I see 3-year-olds being told that, oh, you are going to be sitting for your test next week. In fact, I pray that we're not committing criminal offense, because really, they're not supposed to sit for any test. You can observe them. You can see the chart that I've put that child into. Observation is what we need for children below 5 years of age. Observation, parental views. What are the views of the parent? How do you evaluate them? What's the child's view? Professionals' views, assessment, planning, intervention. So all those key things are very, very vital. Another thing is for children who are over 5 years of age. With that, you will see that there is formative assessment, there is summative assessment. Formative assessment is the ongoing assessment where you actually use the open-ended question, as we said, to test children's understanding. Another thing that we're talking about with the new culture is we must also take those children to the next level. After assessment, so what? That's the question you and I would ask ourselves. How is that informing the future planning of the school? Is it really a tool for you to plan yourself? Your school has performed so well in English. However, you have not performed so well in maths. What are you going to do as a school leader? What are you going to do as a class teacher? What are you going to do as a school practitioner? With that, do I need to change my teacher? Do I need to actually make this teacher to work with that one for them to pair with each other? So all the stakeholders, as I've written at the bottom, the leadership team must be able to meet strategically on it and talk about what they want to do with that child's result. Enough of us saying, oh, I came first. A child can come first in a particular school, but may still be working below the cognitive ability level for that particular year group. So the fact that your child is coming first in your school does not mean that your child is working so well. You must be able to check, is my child working on the expected level? Now, parental involvement. Allow your parents to know where the child is working well and allow them to know where is it that they are underperforming. In quite a lot of our schools, we tend to hide that from parents because we don't want them to remove the children to take them to another school. Private schools that are very, very upright in all this would always get more children. Let people understand what you stand for. Let them know that you stand for the truth, that your child is working so well here. However, there are gaps here, so that you and the parents can easily work on the target with the child. Because if you keep on hiding it, you are destroying the child. And very soon that child will be benchmarked with another child on the street. And mom will say, oh, I don't want that school again because my child is actually not reading well. So it's very important, and share it with teachers, share with that particular child, what target would you like, are we going to give you? Let the child understand what they've done well. And another thing with 21st century, particularly creating the new culture, is assessment does not have to be done physically. It can be done remotely. I mean, in Ogun State recently, we actually assessed 18,000 students, pre-WAEC examination, and they had their result within 2 days. Within 48 hours. So technology has brought in a lot of things, but I'll speak about that when I get into technology. Now, another thing is, this is the key one. Key one is culture of good learning in the classroom. How are we doing that? As teachers, do we have high expectations? As school owners, do we have high expectations? As school leaders, do we have our expectation? Some schools, all they do is just to buy the basic book and teach the children. Enough, because education has moved away from that. We must be able to allow our children to do proper projects, for them to actually come up with a lot of things, for children to know why things are happening, for children to be able to dig deep into why it has happened like that. Not just what is this, but why has it come like this? So encourage students to have positive interactions with each other. And also in everything we're doing, ladies and gentlemen, it's very important for values to permeate through everything. What are the values? Are they respecting each other? Are they taking turns to share? Because when we will see that that is what is ruining our society at the moment. We're producing children that the way some of them will talk will even be pathetic, but at the same time, we can go back to our culture, because whether we like it or not, values is very, they're very important in our society. Give students a voice during class time. Allow them to talk. Make the classroom a safe place to make an error. Don't just say, oh, you have to get it right. When a child makes a mistake, give them questions that can tease out their understanding that, okay, you've done it that way, but let's think about it. You know, you don't just tell a child that, oh, you got it wrong, go and sit down, you know. So model how students can learn, give feedback often, and avoid only celebrating grades so as not to damage others. Because when we celebrate, oh, these children, they got the top, they got the highest, what about that child that is the less able, who has made a lot of effort? So we must always identify things like that. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to take you through the third part, which is on technology and also effective learning. Now, what are the three characteristics of effective learning? Active learning. Our children need to be active. They need to be active. They need to be part of the learning. They need to play and explore things. They need to talk about it. They need to create and think critically as well. We need to give that room to them, because when we give that room for them, it makes them to actually have a better and profound learning in whatever they are doing. Now, you will see that the three primary areas of learning, we've got the communication and language, and that's where we said we must be able to promote a lot of speaking and listening. And also in this particular culture, a lot of people will say that children can learn in their mother language. Yes, they can learn in their mother language, but between 0 to 6, it is very vital for each and every one of us on this platform to know that the formative stage for language is between 0 to 6. And so if even, children, research shows that we can even encourage them to speak like 3 languages. A child can learn how to speak English, then mom might be an Igbo person, dad might be a Yoruba person. So if that child is learning the 3 languages, there won't be any confusion at all. But a lot of us got it wrong. They will say, oh, you have to use Yoruba to teach between 0 to 10 years of age. If we're not careful, that child has left the formative stage, and so English becomes a barrier, because English is still our lingua franca. We're lingua franca, and English is still the national language. Yoruba is not a national language. Igbo is not a national language. What we're practicing at the moment can be practiced in Italy. If you leave that child between 0 to 10 and say, oh, I just want to use Yoruba alone for you, please, we might have destroyed the future of that child. But don't get me wrong, it is very vital that we teach them our own mother language. Mother language is very, very vital, but at the same time, introduce English as part of it as well, so that they can learn the 2 of them at the same time. Because the more they actually exposed to language, because if, for example, you have children in primary schools, they can learn the 100 frequency words. 100 frequency words, if you type it in online, you will see all the 100 frequency words that we can display in our classes, so that children can use that to do a lot of learning during their learning time. Then another thing is personal and social emotional development. That's on values. Bring in values at all times. If children can get this PSHE right, that means that child is likely to become a good writer later, because it calms them down. It makes them to know what is expected. And the last but not the least there is the physical development, because that's something that we're neglecting at the moment in some of our schools, because there's a lot of pressure on us. Everybody wants the child to actually be able to read 1,000 by the time the child is 2 years of age. And so they don't want us to teach, they don't give enough time for other things to be learned. But if you're not careful, you might be doing disservice to the child. So with all this, to wrap up this particular area, you will see that everything can be interwoven, and this is what we call the creative curriculum. When children are learning literacy, there's a lot they can do in English. There's a lot they can do in ICT. There's a lot they can do in science. If, for example, you are teaching Jack and the Beanstalk, you can teach them maths, because as the beanstalk will be growing, you can be measuring it. Children can measure. They can measure the length. They can see how it's growing, and that can be science as well, even though they are learning literacy. So there has to be a good link, and that's something that 21st century education is asking for, that there has to be a good link, and that's something that I've seen in quite a lot of our private schools and few public schools practicing this, that there's a link in whatever they are teaching. Now, that takes us into STEM at the moment. You will see that STEM is what everybody's talking about, and STEM is how to teach science, technology, engineering, and maths. With that, how do we teach science? How do we link it with maths? You are teaching pendulum. How effective? How is it going to relate to maths? How is it going to relate to science? Other subjects. And how you can see the use of technology as well. So that's what STEM is all about. But because of my time as well, you will see that the use of ICT is something that is very crucial in 21st century. I will implore all the practitioners on platform today that if you have not been using ICT, please find a way to train yourself. And school owners must be able to have learning management platforms. Learning management platform is actually free if you're using Microsoft 365. In Ogun State, at the moment, all the 25,000 teachers that we have in Ogun State, all of them are on learning management platform. We've given them different pages. Yoruba teachers can see themselves, math teachers can see themselves, and quite a lot of things. People can upload their resources. So it's high time, because we need to actually look at it. It can make you to manage your schools better when you have a learning management platform. Now, the virtual classroom can provide valuable insight into effect of classroom conditions on students' self-regulation and learning, because you are teaching a lot of things and children, they're just thinking about it, that what are you talking about? But don't forget that ICT can be used as a platform for every other part of the curriculum. ICT is very vital, just like the way English is very vital, that we use it to communicate with every subject. The same thing is ICT is a platform for every subject. And there are so many things that we need to use with IT, with technology. And so a 5-minute animated explainer video will be very good, because it makes lesson to be fun. It makes all of us to see, if we're studying fractions, why do we study fraction? We can actually show somebody where they are making the furrows in the farm, or they're making all that, and children can really, they can really register that. But at the same time, something I want us to understand here is distance learning is also a core thing that we need to be looking at in the 21st century. But with all this, technology is not the answer to everything, because in all our schools, we've got 4 families. In your school, you've got that child that needs a lot of hands-on, a lot of kinesthetic opportunity. If that child can really practicalize what he or she is doing, they understand it better. If I tell some of you to close your eyes on the platform now and tell me the last time you learned something, you will see that the last time you learned something was where they allow you to practicalize. Another family that you have in your class is the auditory learner. He wants to hear it. And a lot of us who are in this group will fall into that group, because I have always taken my driver, for example. I've realized that my driver is so intelligent, but because he is not an auditory learner, he lost it, and people will call him a dropout. But if he is given the opportunity to have hands-on, you will see him coming up with the right answers. So as practitioners of 21st century in classroom, I implore us, when you plan lesson, plan for the 4 families. Don't just plan for just one family. If you plan to just talk about it, that means only one family is being catered for. And so we keep on ruining and damaging students in our schools. Some children want to see what you're talking about. Some children want to touch it. Some children would like to practicalize it. So the last but not the least part is the social climate. Now, for us to go into 21st century, we need to change our climate, the social climate in our classes. Number 1, when last did you display students' work? When you display students' work, it makes them to have a good self-esteem of themselves. Oh, Miss, you've displayed my work. Thank you, sir. Display the work of the child that is very good in maths. The child that is very, very dull, it will not be dull in art. Have an arts corner where you can display more things. Have a science corner where you can display more things. Every child has a strength. There is nothing that God has created that has not been created to be perfect. There is something great about a child. Some of them are gifted but not talented. Some of them are talented but not gifted. So encourage children to have good opportunity to have displays. We're having displays in primary schools. We're having displays in secondary schools. With that, it makes every child to really want to, you can see what I've displayed here. This is teeth, and you can see individual children's work. A lot of children will never forget what molar is, what premolar is, because they can see it, they have drawn it, they have made it, they have cut it. So some groups could have cut it, some groups might have written it. So there's a lot going into displays. Greeting students as they arrive at each classroom. Even as a school leader, as a principal, I can see Mrs. Ogumbo-Meyi. As a school principal, you might just want to say hello to all your children. And as a principal or as a head teacher, have at least 90% of the names of your children at hand. Because if you call a child by the first name, oh, Lemon, how are you this morning? Good morning. Lemon will never forget you. Lemon would always want to remember you. Lemon would always want to do something that will please you as a leader. So providing emotional support to those students who need it, creating a safe, comfortable learning environment, including temperature. I mean, I have added this because sometimes some children are so tired. Sometimes we don't even remember to open the windows of the classrooms. Some classrooms are so dull, even the light, there's no light in that place. It makes you moody, it makes you to be depressed. And those are the kind of things that we can look at in all our schools. Staff must not be prejudiced also, and do not stereotype any student. All students should be included and valued, because sometimes when we're choosing children to go for debate, when we're choosing children, do you find time to choose the others for other things as well? So we must actually be kind to them. Now, you can see this classroom that I'm showing today. Is it welcoming? You can see the card that children have made. Are students able to access resources? Is there a notice board for parents to know what's happening this week? Because we're going into 21st century. Take care of your parents. Don't just think of parents that are illiterate every time. Because sometimes people would always give me excuse. Parents will never do that, or they are not like that. But even if one start doing it, that's a step. So please take a step. Now, intellectual climate. We finish with the social climate. Intellectual climate, celebrating success in small ways, such as verbal congratulations during a lesson. Please celebrate success, because it's not in our culture. Forgive me, wonderful practitioners on the platform. We don't know how to celebrate success sometimes. And sometimes when we now do it, we now overdo it. Hello, darling. How are you, darling? How are you, darling? And we keep on now exaggerating and patronizing the children. But the key thing is, look for something that a child has done. The class is very noisy, and only the children on the front table are very quiet and they are doing their things. And you want to correct the class. You can say, well done, Group A. I am so proud of you. It makes every other person to see what you're talking about. Set learning goals for students that reflect their personal needs and challenge them appropriately. You can see some of the targets that I've written there. I can use adverbs and adjectives to make my writing more interesting. These are the kind of things that we can cut and put in our children's books. When children can see targets, they will know what they're working towards. At the beginning of a lesson in a primary school, for example, you can say, go back to the front page. What is your target for the week? And that child will see it and say, oh, I need to work towards this. You must value questioning, inquiry, and investigative approach to learning at all times. Another thing is, for us to have a good culture in our schools, we need rules and policies. A lot of people have met me on the road. A lot of people have sent me mails to say, Mrs. Soyombo, our children don't behave well. They will not behave well if you don't actually agree on class rules together. Don't be a leader that will just impose things on people. If you're a leader that would always bring rules to class, you're on your own. Only you will obey your rules. But when you come into a class, the first day, maybe in the afternoon, let's agree on rules. Let people work in different groups. Let them agree. And whatever you see that is overlapping, by the time you now bring it, you already have your mind on what you want to put there. Then when you make a poster, let every child sign into it. That means they are taking ownership. They are the owner of the rules. So develop a behavior policy jointly with students and display it in classroom. Discussing the behavior policy in school assembly or other platforms, and allow parents to be part of your behavior policy. Ensure all staff use the behavior policy consistently. Because in Nigeria, quite a lot of private schools will tell me that parents are bullying them. Parents will say this, but involve them more. Don't run away from your parents. When you turn your back to your problem, you are likely to be wounded. But face your problem, face your parents, hold them, let them be part of the practitioners that would actually agree on all this. Now, traditions and routines. Have time in each assembly where successes from all aspects of school and student home life are celebrated. School assemblies are very, very critical because that is where we can celebrate success. Staff and PTA can plan and organize things. You can plan the calendar, principals in the house, head teachers in the house. You can plan things with your PTA leaders that what are the things we're going to celebrate this year together. By the time you do it, they take more ownership. Sometimes you can even allow them to cook. They will do all the cooking. They will do all the provision of what they need. And it takes the burden away from you. Now, how do we work with parents? Set up parent discussion groups to talk about issues that that want to raise with you or the staff. At the moment, I've seen quite a lot of parents a lot of schools setting up WhatsApp platform. If you're not careful, your WhatsApp platform can actually destroy your school, because as soon as one parent gets annoyed, it affects every other person. Get your IT person that can do the WhatsApp platform for you, where they may not be able to, I don't know, it all depends on the policy of the school, but sometimes some schools will create platforms where you can see all of them, where you can send newsletters to, but they will not be able to talk because it's been regulated like that. And they will not be able to see each other's numbers as well, but they will see that all parents are on that platform, but it makes you to communicate with your parents on time. If they now go and form their WhatsApp, yeah, that's fine. So provide parents with regular updates on their children's progress, but also the school curriculum and student successes. If we can give them what we're going to be be doing in January, for example, between January and March, share it with your parents. These are the topics we're going to be doing. They also might say, oh, I want to come and contribute to that. I want to be part of this. Let them be part of that because it's that they have their children there. So give students a voice. And in our schools, let's go back to the values that we started with when we were young in all our public schools, saying please and thank you to teachers, even to our students, because those two phrases are so important in our culture today. Valuing and respecting the home language of all students, we must value because if you have an Igbo child in your class, because of that, you must put one particular program focusing on Igbo background there. Don't just do Ngbati alone. So we must always agree on that. We must value different abilities at all levels and making adjustment to that disability, so that disability does not exclude students. To that, disability does not exclude students. In some of our schools, we've got children who are autistic. Now they're autistic and we've put all the children with needs on just one table and we've neglected them. And all we give them is continue writing notes, continue copying down notes. We are destroying lives. Those children, a lot of them are very gifted and very talented. If only we know how to handle them. So with that, but I mean, I'm not doing special needs today because there are so many strategies we use for special needs students. But when the time comes, I'll do that. Respecting each other as learners. We must respect each other as learners. Having time each week where staff or student can see the school leader without an appointment. And also because now is a time of safeguarding. A child might have just been abused by the driver, bringing the child to school. And do they have anybody to talk to in your school? The house help has just sexually molested a child. Do they have somebody? Is there a designated person in your school that they can speak to? So all those things are very, very important. Now, from all the things that I've said this afternoon, colleagues, Martin Luther King said something that I would like us to take on board, because I'm sure I would have said a lot of things that you people will say, oh, Ronke, that can happen in England, but it can't happen in Nigeria. But I mean, I want to challenge you today, as you have come for this session today, that take the first step in faith. You do not have to see the whole staircase. Just take the first step. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am. Wow. That was a great one. Thank you so much. I've really learned a lot. I've taken lots of notes and I'm going to share the high points on my social media platform. Thank you so much for the time, ma'am. So do we have any question? I have questions now. Just you can drop it in the chat room or you can raise your virtual hand so that we can get it rolling. But I have a question, ma, while we wait for other people to send in their question. And my question is, how, all of these that you have said now, my concern now is maybe primarily on the public school sector now. So I would want to ask, how do we put all of these into practice in public schools, taking in cognizance the large number and the varying students teacher ratio? So how do we manage all of these in terms of the rules and everything that you have spoken about?
Thank you very much, sir. You will see that when you were introducing me, you said I was the one that led Federal to actually do the manual for quality assurance.
Yes, please.
And with that, if people are accessing quality assurance book, it actually identifies 7 areas. And he identifies what we should do under teaching and learning. He identifies things under different kinds of things like achievement and standard. And with that, our public schools cannot change overnight. However, I have to categorically tell you that quite a lot of our public schools are changing now, because you need to do a lot of training and retraining for them. And not only that, allow people to understand what is expected and monitor, support them. That's why quality assurance should not be, that's why quality assurance moved away from being inspectorate, where you go to schools, you just go and flog people. You are supposed to identify areas where people are working well and what are the key things that they need to do to get it better. So with all this support, that's something that as a country, I must be honest about it, that we lack that. Because as a country, if I take the accountant, for example, you will see that the accountant is there, the auditor is there, and the two of them are working they're working on their own. The auditor is not under the accountant. But in Nigeria, a lot of states have put their auditors under the accountant, I mean quality assurance under Ministry of Education. Ministry of Education does all the logistics, but at the same time, if you put them together, if you put quality assurance under that, if you don't give that autonomy to quality assurance to be able to stand on its own, then it makes you to destroy our public schools. And that's something that is very, very important, because if you take the likes of UK, Ofsted is on its own. Ofsted is not under any local authority at all. So if Ofsted tells you that they're coming to your school, you are more or less wetting yourself. So I want to implore each and every one of us that we need a lot of trainings. Particularly, we need to expose ourselves to trainings with our public schools. And also, you will see that where we're overcrowded as well, people are beginning to use microphones. They're beginning to use a lot of technology as well. So, because I mean, when we did DigiClass in Ogun State, I have some of the guys that we did it together on the platform today. You will see that when we did DigiClass, we used only 40 teachers for the whole 6 months. But at the same time, we were able to reach a lot of people. So there are so many things we can do. There are so many things that we've got to think outside the box now, and not just think of what is not going on well, but what can I do, even though I belong to public school sector.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So we have a question here from Lemon, and it says, don't you think our curriculum needs to be reviewed, developed, implemented, and evaluated before anything else?
I seriously agree with Mr. Lemon, because part of the things that recently we did in Abuja, I did a presentation there, and it was about curriculum, because the last time we reviewed our curriculum was 12 years ago. And our curriculum is not fit for the 21st century child, no doubt about that. And I'm sure we're working on that at the moment at the federal level, because whether we like it or not, we've got to review our curriculum. If people are bypassing our curriculum, Lagos State, for example, you're using about 16 curricula in Lagos, where people will say we're using British curriculum, American curriculum, Turkish curriculum, the German and Indian curriculum. Who can practice that in UK? Will any of us come and start a school in UK and say, I'm using Nigerian curriculum? Who born monkey? So all those things, they are the kind of things that we need to look at, because reviewing and revamping our curriculum is definitely key into moving forward, particularly even with the use of technology, the use of STEM. We've definitely our curriculum at the moment needs a lot of tweaking. Then when it comes to curriculum as well, we've got to look at NUC, because if you are only focusing on primary and secondary curriculum, what about the teachers that we are producing? What about the graduates that we're producing? Because at the moment, you will see that standard is going down because we're not addressing it from primary, secondary. Also, we're not addressing it at the tertiary level. So even at tertiary level, there was a meeting we had last week as well, that everybody understands now that there is a need to seriously review our curriculum at all levels.
Thank you, ma'am. Olasokomi says,
sorry, Mr.
how do we access the quality assurance manual?
Sorry, Mr. I think there's somebody wanting to talk, Mr. Dayo.
Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you very, very much, Mrs. Soyombo. We really thank you today for what you have shared with us, your wealth of experience. We can't thank you enough. I really like being part of this today. I just want to quickly ask you, I am a trustee in the UK educational sector of a multi-academy trust. I just want to quickly ask you, looking at it from the Nigerian perspective, looking at it, what can we do? One of the things, I came into education in the UK from the perspective of being a governor, a parent governor of a primary school, and then rose to being a trustee now. My question is, how can we involve those children that are out of education at the moment? Because education in the UK is for every child. Like you said, those gifted and those that have some challenges in getting on with learning. So those that are out of education now, what can you suggest to us to take away today on what sort of strategy we can use to bring every child, thinking that every child matters in Nigeria as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. There's no doubt about it that our children are out of school. And with that, as a state, even as at federal level, it is a target at the federal level at the moment, that there's a lot of advocacy. But at the same time, there has to be a policy. Policy has got to come into it where it will be made compulsory for every child to go into schools. At the same time, I know states are trying their best. Having worked in Lagos, Lagos State would always receive about 80 students every day from different states. So with that, sometimes they don't have the facilities, and that's why the private schools also should always be cared for, because we've got 18,000 private schools in Lagos. But at the same time, when it comes to out of school, there must be a policy, a clear policy of why it is compulsory for every child to go back to school. And not only that, also there has to be advocacy by state government, and that's something that Ogun State is doing at the moment. We are having advocacy that every child, and also we're working with all the community leaders, ensuring that all our children are going back to schools. So, I mean, with all the strategies that we have put in place, there are still more rooms for greater opportunities, but I'm sure we are working towards that. And also, government must embrace these children, because sometimes it's good for children to want to come, but when there are no places for them, or if some parents cannot afford it, it makes learning to be difficult. But at the same time, as a country, we don't have an excuse than to say, let's all come into schools. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Dayo, for that. Okay, but before I move on to Mr. Olasukomi's question, I just wanted to ask, because we see lots of pictures, images on social media, purportedly taken from public schools, where we see children sitting on the floor. Some don't even have furniture to write on. And so I want to ask, how are we going to engage the government to at least provide seats and make the classroom conducive for learners?
Thank you very much. Nigeria has this problem, which I'm sure I won't go into today, because there is problem with the government and so on. But in all fairness, there is provision at this UBEC level, at the federal level, for every state to cater for all this. Now, I'll use my own state where I work as a special advisor, for example. The first year in office, we were able to renovate 95 schools. As we speak, we are renovating 952 schools. And that's because what my own governor has done is to pay counterpart funding of 5 million in addition to the 5 billion in addition to the 5 billion given by the federal government. So that's something we're using in actually renovating all our schools. In an ideal world, our children should not at this stage be sitting on the floor at all. But at the same time, the cankerworm has been there for so long that it has entrenched itself, that it will take time before we come around all these problems. But I can assure you that quite a lot of states, Lagos also, for example, I'm quite close to them, and I know that everybody is trying their best to see how they can quickly get rid of all these problems. But at the same time, there is a lot, particularly in the South, of what the needs are and how we can quickly crack the problems.
Thank you so much. Mr. Olasukomi is asking, how do we access the Quality Assurance Manual?
Okay, Quality Assurance Manual, if my memory serves me well, it should be on Quality Assurance Platform of Lagos State, because that was where I worked as Lagos State Quality Assurance Director General. But what I can do is I'll send it to you, Mr. Asuko, to send to everybody after this session.
Okay, ma'am.
I'm sure you have everybody's. Do you have email addresses of everybody?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I can attach it for you, please.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. Mr. Otuonye is asking, considering time factor and expectations to cover listed topics or the scheme in a given time, how can one strike a balance to satisfy all classes of learners, like you have mentioned?
That is the best question today. I want to say that as practitioners, before the beginning of the session, what we need to do is to do the mapping of all our topics. There are some topics that you can take together. You may take it together when you're doing literacy, you may take it together when you're doing math. So if you do the mapping, look at all the topics, how do we want to bring this together? And that is where the creative curriculum comes into. If you do not allow teachers to have that meeting to see how they can do mapping on how they can do, because we have something called curriculum and you have something called the long-term plan and the short-term plan. But if by the time you categorically plan things together, it'll be easy for you to be able to achieve all this effectively well.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Lemon says, on the issue of vocational technology education, do you think it would be better if there are 2 GOTECOs in each local government?
No, with technical vocational, I don't know what GTOC is. I don't know if you want to explain what the acronym is, please.
Okay, Mr.
Yes.
Lemon.
Yeah, about the government science colleges.
Sorry?
He's talking about the government science technical colleges.
Government science.
Yeah, okay. Now, it's a GTOC.
GOTECOs.
Oh, okay. Now, yeah, go on, Mr. Odebola.
Yeah, it's just an informal acronym of government science and technical colleges, just like we call them GOTECOs in Ogun State.
Okay.
So GSTCs, that's the correct acronym. So that is what he's talking about. Think about GSTCs, not GOTECOs.
Okay. So I mean, okay, but what does it? What's the question about the technical college? Sorry.
Is asking if it's if it would be better if there are 2 of such in each local government.
Yes, thank you so much, sir, for that question. I agree with you, particularly with 21st century, where we can have enough technical colleges in our society today, because when I spoke about children dropping off on the way, you will see that some children conveniently can be tailored towards technical education, because if they're very hands-on, we need to mentality of our parents thinking that technical education is only meant for dropouts. It is not. It is meant for children that are very, very kinesthetic in their learning. And with that, you will see that another thing that we are trying to do is how do we make it dual vocational training? Because with dual vocational training, what we're supposed to do with technical education is where students can have 60% of the teaching time in their different schools, and then 40% in their different 60% in industries and 40% time in their different schools. With that, it gives them a better opportunity to have an in-depth understanding of whatever they are learning. So it's very, very vital that we share all this with our students. And it's very vital that states start looking into that like that as well. Because internationally, you will see that the likes of Germany and UK, they would always want you to have dual vocational training rather than you just going where people are just explaining things in theory alone, but you've got to practicalize it to make it more friendly. So technical education is very, very important. At the moment in my state, for example, we have just 8 of them, and we have we have 2 in every division. We're almost there now. So I agree with you.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. But this is the last question. So we have from Professor Olusegun. Is it possible for government alone to finance education? How can society be fully involved?
Right, thank you very much, Prof. Unfortunately, government alone cannot finance education. And that's why everybody must be looking into how they can do education trust fund, because with education trust fund, it makes people to be able to contribute to education. And particularly at the Southwest, people are quite philanthropic around here. We must be able to involve them. And that's why also it's good for us to, in my state, for example, we're trying to start something called Adopt a School program. With Adopt a School program at the we're almost finishing the project now. Hopefully in the new year, that is something that we'll be launching out in Ogun State. Because with that, you'll be able to see I've got people from this platform today from different parts of the world, and wherever you are, Mr. Dayo was speaking from UK. I'm speaking from UK, and I'm sure there is one or two people also from abroad. With that, conveniently, in the comfort of their homes, they can see the picture of their schools, they can see the state of their schools, and they might say, oh, I want to contribute and do this, I want to contribute and do that. And that's something that we're planning as well, that we're doing. We're almost finishing it. And quite a lot of people also have been supporting us in the state. So we want to welcome that. But at the same time, what we're saying is there must be transparency, because some people can see it as an opportunity to use it as a platform to make money. But if states can manage it more effectively, definitely we need help. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Okay, so before I finally let you go, ma'am, as an experienced educator in and outside Nigeria, what is your advice as we move as educators, as we move into 2021? What's your advice for us?
My advice is, the first thing is we must have passion for the work that we're doing, have passion for the children, care for the children, because if you just go just because it's a job, you can never be natural, because you can never give your best, because nobody can pay any educationist the amount of money that is required for the kind of jobs that everybody's doing. But have great passion for those children, for the future leaders of Nigeria, and don't let us just keep on blaming ourselves. Even if I can start transforming my own classroom, that will make a difference in our community. Let's not keep on producing children that will just be wayward, but let's continue to produce children with the best behavior ever. Once again, I appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you for your time. Truly appreciate. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. So with these, we are bringing it to a close. And I want to appreciate Mrs. Ronke Soyombo for your time. Thank you very much. All the participants joining in from all over the world. Thank you so much for your time. And I have a message here from a participant who is complaining about she didn't join in good time. So we're going to get back to you. Yes, there's recording. There's recording, and I'm going to get back to you on how you can get the soft copy for future references. And as soon as Mrs. Soyombo sends in the quality assurance manual, I'm also going to distribute to every one of us. Thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate, and I look forward to every one of us making great impact in the education space. Thank you, and bye for now.
The Asuko Educational and Children Development Series, TAECDS, is a leading educational webinar started with the objective of creating a platform for continuous professional development of school leaders and educators across Africa, creating a platform for the exchange of meaningful knowledge and collaboration between leaders in the education field and leaders in making. Since its inception, TAECDS has had the privilege of hosting top education experts in and outside the country, with discussions on several topical issues which have been immensely beneficial. The Asuko Educational and Children Development Series, TAECDS, is a leading educational webinar started with the objective of creating a platform for continuous professional development of school leaders and educators across Africa, a platform for the exchange of meaningful knowledge and collaboration between leaders in the education field and leaders in making. Since its inception, TAECDS has had the privilege of hosting top education experts in and outside the country, with discussions on several topical issues which have been immensely beneficial to the attendees.